So I'm here to talk about Robogames. My name is David Calkins. I'm the co-founder of Robogames. I also have a bunch of other robot titles, including a former professor of robotics at San Francisco State University, president of the Robotics Society of America, and general overall robot geek. Robogames is actually recognized in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's largest robot competition. Wired magazine has called us one of the top 10 best American geek fests. Discover magazine said that the best robots compete in Robogames just as the best athletes train for the Olympics. And my actual point of pride is that we were actually on ESPN as one of the top 10 plays of the day. Only because finally, the geeks actually got on ESPN, and it's not just basketball stars and baseball and football and hockey, is that we actually had robots on ESPN. So Robogames came about by a very long and circuitous route, mostly because there's all sorts of individual little robot competitions all over the world, whether they're humanoid competitions like these or large combat robot competitions like BattleBots or Robot Wars. Sumo robot competitions, which instead of two big fat guys pushing each other out of a circular ring, you have two skinny little square robots about the size of a Rubik's Cube pushing each other out of a ring. And robot soccer, as well as many other. And what I noticed is that most of the people who'd competed in a given event would never cross-compete. So much like if you work at Google, you tend to focus just in marketing or just on the engineering side or just on the programming side or just on the research side. And it's very rare in the robotics world that there would be any crossover, that somebody would actually try to cross-compete. And unfortunately, with that, too many of those disciplines are very highly focused. So for instance, robot soccer is very much an artificial intelligence focused competition, whereas the people who compete in that generally buy their robots. So if the robot breaks, they don't, even though they're robot contestants, they rarely know how to fix their own robots. They ship them off to the service center to be fixed and come back. The robot combat guys are great welders and mechanical engineers and machinists, but those robots have little to no artificial intelligence on them. The robot sumo contestants are very good with sensors, and they can sense all the world around them and things like that. But there's negligible AI on the sumo robots, and again, most of the robots are purchased as kits. So what I would do is this is almost 10 years ago now, is I'd tell the robot guys from soccer, hey, you should really, talk to the sumo guys and learn more about, sensors and things like that. And I'd talk to the combat guys and say, hey, you should learn more about AI, and basically try and get them all in the same room and to build better robots. And that wouldn't happen. The combat guys were just too focused on their combat competitions to go anywhere else. Same with the sumo and everything else. And so basically, we founded Robogames to put everybody in the same room at the same time, much like the Olympic model, that, ideally the swimmers can learn from the gymnasts, and the gymnasts can learn from the basketball players, and so on and so forth, so that everybody's on an equal footing. And that was really the goal of Robogames. Other goals about this is to showcase robot events to people who wouldn't go to them. If you went to a robot combat event, such as Robot Wars or BattleBots or the Robot Fighting League events, you'd have sellout crowds, and you'd have just huge stands of audience people watching this cool robot fighting. But if you'd go to a robot sumo competition, which can also be very exciting, or a robot soccer competition, you'd have very, very few people in the audience. And so one of the things we do with Robogames is we put the combat all the way in the back of the house, and then most of the people who buy the tickets come to see the combat, but then they'll have to walk by the sumo and the soccer and the firefighting robots and the Lego robots and these things, and they actually get entranced. And actually, one of my best friends, Rick, came for the robot combat, and he stopped at the robot soccer and sat there the whole day and never even saw a single combat match because he was so entranced with the soccer. But he admitted that he never would have gone if he was just going for robot soccer, that he thought that would have been a dumb thing. And certainly the audience starts to realize just how difficult robotics is, and by coming and seeing, wow, these robots aren't perfect and things like that, it helps get more people involved. The contestant profiles, unlike a lot of competitions which are focused on strictly high schools or strictly colleges, things like that, we're an open competition, so we get kids as young as 6, old guys as old as 72, across the board. It's really not limited to engineers. At most, it's 20% professional engineers, be that software or hardware. The other 80% is completely random and diverse. You know, we have warehouse workers and people who work in marketing and bean counters, and just it's across the board. We get contestants from all over the world. This slide's actually a little old. It says 15 countries last year. I think last year we actually had about 30 different countries. And it grows every year. This year we have a big contingent coming from Indonesia, from several different colleges. And I don't even know how they found out about us, but they're coming. The second year we did it, we had 2 kids from Brazil who came. They literally stayed on my wife and I's couch because they couldn't really afford a hotel room. So we're like, yeah, come, you can stay with us. It's no problem. Just remember that we're not going to be very good hosts because we're always busy running the event. And now that Brazilian contingent this year is about 40 individuals from 5 different teams, all of whom are coming because of that first couple who came and did it. And it continues to go. So last year we had over 500 teams. Because the event is similar to the Olympics in that you have, robot soccer and robot combat and sumo and all these other things, a team might have a single robot competing in a single event. It might have a single robot competing in multiple events, or it might have multiple robots competing in multiple events. For example, these robots in front of me, humanoid robots, can be used in about 12 different events. The primary one is Kung Fu, and so basically what we have, and after my long talk, I'll give some robot demos. And so the robots will actually do Kung Fu, and just like regular Kung Fu, the other robot falling on the mat first goes down a point, and then the first robot to lose 3 points is the loser, and the other robot wins. But we also use these exact same robots for robot soccer, and so it's 3-on-3 soccer. We use them for acrobatics, and that was one of those things of a lot of people were feeling that there was too much focus on out-and-out competition, and so then I wanted it more like, like ice skating or gymnastics, where the robots now just perform by themselves. And so now we even have 5 different art robot competitions. Some of those teams will be one individual making lots and lots of robots. Other teams will be many individuals working on a single robot or more. For instance, Shane Knapp, who invited me here, he's worked both as a single and as a team, mostly building combat robots, but every robot is always better if it's built with teams. Academic papers for both the high school and the university students. We also have a peer-reviewed academic paper presentation. So a lot of the people, for instance, the humanoids, a lot of people do focus on vision research for the humanoids. So you can see, and actually this robot here, it's got a camera attached to it, and that camera links back to the board. It can actually do object tracking, blob tracking, things like that. Other humanoids might focus on walking gaits, G-A-I-T, which is how accurately you can get the robot to move in the same way that a human might move, and how can we make that more smooth. We typically have about 50 competitions in which we give medals. We list over 80 competitions. We don't always get all of those competitions subscribed. One of the things I tell neophytes is, hey, you want to win a medal, just compete in these competitions because nobody else ever does, and so long as you can clear safety, you'll win. Which is a sad truth, is just that some of them, sometimes the bar is too high. Since the beginning, back in 2004, we've offered the robot triathlon, in which you have to build a robot which can swim, run in some kind of legged capacity, and be wheeled. And actually there's several university robots that can do those things. They just never get a chance to get the time off to come and compete. We don't do every robot event around the world. We try to focus on, just as the Olympics doesn't do every possible sporting event, neither do we do every possible robot event, but we try to do all of the major events. The 4 pillars of Robogames, of the 8 odd events, still are combat, sumo, soccer, and Robo1, and I'll go over those events now. Robo1 is probably the one that most people think most of when they talk about robots, which is humanoids, such as the 2 I've got in front of me or the one on screen. Most of those humanoids are around 15 inches. Both of these robots in front of me are about 13 inches. They weigh about 2 kilograms. Some of them can be as tall as 4 feet, and I've seen them as small as 5 inches tall. They tend to be the hardest to control. A wheeled robot is a very easily controlled robot because it's working with gravity, and basically it just sits there and it's propelling itself. Whereas a walking robot, these simple humanoids only have 16 motors. Some of the humanoids out there will have 24 to 50 motors. The human body, for point of reference, has about 640 muscles or motors for ranges of motion. And like I say, we do have over 10 events with these robots. So we do everything from the kung fu and the soccer and the acrobatics to we have a basketball free shoot in which the robots have to see how many basketballs they can sink within 3 minutes. And this year we've added Mech Warriors. So for all of those people who played any kind of Mech Warrior video game, we're actually now having humanoid-controlled Mech Warriors. They're only shooting airsoft cannons, so you can see the cannon in front of this. They shoot little yellow BBs. And then they have chest plates to receive the hits or not receive the hits. But one of the interesting things about it is that we're trying to replicate the actual feel of all of the Mech Warriors video games so that there's a camera in the head and the human controller is not actually allowed to watch the field of play. So if the field of play is over here, the humans would be around the curtain back here. They can watch the camera, they can see what's going on through the camera, and they're allowed any feedback from that robot in the same way that if you were inside the robot, you get feedback. But what you're not allowed to do is actually watch the field of play. So you don't have that eye-in-the-sky sense of, okay, I know that my opponent is over there. And there will be artificial buildings. So we've built all these styrofoam buildings so that the robots can hide and move around and things like that. So if you don't see the other robot through your camera, you don't know where he is. And then you have to work within that strategy of finding the other robot or sitting and waiting for him or her to come to you. And speaking of him or her coming to you, another interesting thing about Robogames is the number of female participants. I am a former computer programmer, and I think a lot of you here are or work with computer programmers, and it's probably like a 95 to 98 percentile of men to women. An interesting thing about robot competitions is it's probably 30 to 40% women. So it's a much nicer, more diverse talent pool. Robot soccer is probably the most difficult of the challenge. We actually offer several different forms of robot soccer, several different leagues. The picture up there is called Mirosat, which is micro robot soccer. All of those robots are 10 centimeter squares or less, so about 4 inches or less, about the size of a Rubik's Cube. They're all autonomous. You have to program the robot major command center, and what you do is generally you program a laptop, which then speaks via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or any other communication protocol to your 5 or 11, depending on which field you're playing, robots, and then that coordinates. The little colors, if you can see them, there's stickers on top, and those identify the robots. So there's 2 look-down cameras above the field identifying the robots. The interesting thing about Mirosat, and this is where I talk about my friend Rick, who came and just stopped and watched this, is unlike regular soccer, which can be very boring in terms of you get a 1-0 score or you get nothing scores and things like that. Mirosat, you get US football kinds of scores. It's so fast. It's, even though they're tiny little robots, they're lightning fast. And so it's not atypical to see scores of 25 to 17, to these kinds of scores, real football scores. And it's lightning fast. It uses a golf ball as the ball, which is also great for pool-style things. So it's very much more like indoor soccer league rather than traditional European soccer league. So there's lots of bouncing the ball off the walls and all of these kinds of physics involved. It's very fast. The other soccer leagues we do is we do the humanoid soccer league, which then is human-controlled. And one of the interesting things we found out about this is for those of you who like kung fu movies and things like that, when the bad guy in a kung fu movie or something like Highlander does the backflips all the way down the hall, to get away from the other guys or to get to the other guys, what we found in humanoid soccer is that actually works better than running down the field. So everybody thinks we're showing off when we're playing humanoid soccer, when in fact what we do is it's just faster to cartwheel down the field than it is for a humanoid robot to run down the field. So it almost looks more like a gymnastics meet than a soccer meet because you'll just see these robots going head over heels or cartwheeling up and down the field and then jumping and doing kung fu moves to turn around really quickly to kick the ball. Unfortunately, like human soccer, you do see a lot of human soccer scores. In the semifinal round last year, we actually try and get as many people involved as possible. So I have a fleet of 20 of these robots, and we loan them out to other teams so that other teams can play. And there was an Austrian team that had come. They'd never used the robots before. And so I loaned them a set of robots, and so they went through the tree, the competition tree. And unfortunately, in the semifinal round, they beat us, the U.S. team, 1-0 in overtime. So I ended up not getting any medals, and they ended up getting the silver medal with our robots. So you can even win without owning any robots. Other variants are those like trash can sized soccer, so it's about the size of a small trash can, and those are all autonomous, but they don't talk to a central computer. They just talk amongst themselves, just like humanoids. So basically, each one has a known objective. Like if you're the goalie, you know that you're the goalie, or if you're the forward, you know that you're the forward, and you try and coordinate passing and things like that. Sumo is probably the oldest robot competition. Like I said before, you don't have two fat guys, you have two skinny little robots. What you see in that is it's an all-autonomous league, and it's a black surface with a white circle. And so generally, you have two sets of sensors. One is a look-down sensor, so that if the robot hits that white line, you know that you're hitting the white line, so that the robot doesn't drive itself out of the arena. The other sensors are to find the other robot, and because it's a perfect environment, as a general rule, if that robot sees something else, then it knows that that's the other robot, and so then it goes. And sometimes you get matches over, unlike real sumo, which is fairly long. Most robot sumo matches will last 10 seconds tops before the other robot's been pushed out. I had the great pleasure of going to the All Japan Robot Sumo tournament in December of last year, and for the first time ever in Japanese history, the Yokozuna, the grand champion of Robot Sumo, was a woman, and not only was she the champion, but her robot was so powerful with downforce. A lot of sumo robots use magnets, that she had to drive her robot off of the raised ring, like you see there, onto a wooden platform, because no human was ever capable, and we tried to pull her robot off of the steel ring because her downforce was so strong. Most of the time what would happen if you were standing outside of the ring and you picked up her robot, the ring, which weighs about 200 pounds, would just come up with it. So if you were strong enough to lift the 200-pound ring, that would just come up. Otherwise, you just fought with it. But what she would do is she would drive it backwards onto a circular-mounted wooden platform, and then it would just lose its downforce as it would drive onto the wood. Combat certainly is probably the most famous because of BattleBots and Robot Wars on TV. Like all of the competitions, anyone can do it. One of the reasons why I say anyone can do it is because that has so many weight classes. The TV show typically showed the larger weight classes, like the 220 or 340-pound weight classes, but it goes all the way down to 5.3 grams, or 5.3 ounces, 100 grams. And the most popular weight class that a lot of kids get involved in are the 1-pound and 3-pound weight classes. There's also 12-pound, 30-pound, and 60-pound. So Shane, for example, competes in the 12 and the 30-pound and 3-pound. So it's one of those things where you can build a 3-pound robot combat robot for $200 or more. I mean, some of the robots, even the lighter weight robots, will cost thousands of dollars. In the upper class, again, you can do it for very cheaply. I've known junkyard guys who will build a 220-pound robot for $200, mostly because they're finding old wheelchair motors, things like that they're using for their drivetrains. They're using old junk for their infrastructure, things like that. And sometimes those robots are better than other robots. There's a very notorious robot from a .com multimillionaire called Buster. And I actually asked Hal the other day, and he finally admitted it. Buster cost him $90,000 to build. It's a $90,000 220-pound robot milled out of a solid piece of titanium. And if anybody knows anything about metallurgy, if you don't, let me say that titanium is one of the strongest metals that you can buy, and he was using an industrial titanium alloy, a military-grade alloy. And he doesn't even know the dollar sign, but when machinists look at that, you count the number of bits that he had to have gone through milling out a solid billet into the hole inside. And so having been a former professor of robotics, I was with the head of mechanical engineering. We were looking at that, and he estimated probably about $5,000 of milling bits, just because bits break, especially with things like titanium. So you can spend $90,000 building a robot that loses, and you can spend $200 building a robot that wins. Or, of course, you can spend $200 building a robot that loses and $90,000 building a robot that wins. There's not necessarily a corollary between your ability to win and the cost of the robot. Tetsujin is one of the most interesting of the events that we do. It's not a purely robotic event. For those of you who remember Aliens, Starship Troopers, these movies, what Tetsujin is you actually strap on a robotic augmentation suit, and then we have 3 challenges. The one shown is lifting. And so Alex Sokolsky, the guy shown in this photograph, is lifting, I don't know, probably about 400 or 500 pounds on that barbell, more so than he could ever lift by himself. There's another guy who competes, Monty Reed, who actually was paralyzed in a skydiving accident. And we've actually got photographs of Monty jumping. And so he's built a suit which doesn't allow him to walk, interestingly enough, but it does allow him to hop. And so he hops back and forth wearing his suit. And CBS actually just did a really good special on Monty. Robomagellan is a more locally started competition. And for those of you who know the DARPA Grand Challenge, you know Robomagellan. It's just a very scaled down version of the DARPA Grand Challenge. Instead of building a life-size autonomous car, you're building a remote control-sized autonomous car. And where we do the event at Fort Mason in San Francisco, right on the water. All of the events happen inside except for Robomagellan, and then there's a park right above Fort Mason. And so the robots have to go from one end of the park to the other, but it is not a straight line kind of event. There's about 6 cones that the robots get extra points for going to the cones and touching them. They get the GPS waypoints for both the start, the end, and the cones. But there are lots and lots of obstacles in that particular park. There's a giant sinkhole that the robots can go in, and if you go into that sinkhole, you can't see out. There's trees, there's rocks, there's pathways, there's joggers, there's dogs. We actually, last year, we had a dog attack one of the robots. And there's a lot of great photographs of that on Flickr, if you can find them. So there's lots of obstacles, just like regular DARPA Grand Challenge. And as I said in the beginning, there's lots of events to Robogames. There's firefighting. The photograph accompanying this slide is the firefighting arena. And firefighting, basically, it's a long-term goal of building autonomous robots that today we have, robot vacuum cleaners that can sit in your house and then just turn on automatically at, say, 3 in the morning and do your vacuuming, or at noon when you're at work, however you want to work it. The goal of firefighting robots is kind of to cross that robot vacuum with a fire extinguisher and a smoke detector. So that basically when most household fires happen, they're in full conflagration by the time the fire department gets there. If you could have a household firefighting robot, not actually something where you're retrofitting a building like this is, where you've actually got a sprinkler system, but just something that anybody can buy, put it in their house, sense a fire, and then put out that fire really before it gets too bad. That's the point of firefighting robots. And speaking of anybody being able to compete, an interesting thing about Robogames is we're on our 6th year now. We've done it 5 years in a row. We introduced firefighting the 2nd year, so it's only been a challenge for 4 years. The picture there is of a little boy named Tony Pratt-Canis. Tony Pratt-Canis, when this photograph was taken, was, I think, 13. I seem to think he's 17 right now, so I'm doing the backwards math. Most of the people who compete in firefighting robotics are professional engineers. I have 40-year-olds with professional engineering degrees because it's a very difficult challenge. You have to be able to identify the fire versus the hot spots of light. So it's not strictly a bright point. You have to actually have heat sensors. You have to be able to solve the literal maze of going from room to find the fire. You have to be able to put out the fire. All of these autonomous challenges. So most of the people who compete are either grad students or professional engineers. Tony is the first year was a 14-year-old homeschool student who took the gold medal and has taken the gold medal every year. And all of the professional engineers, especially 2 guys who own a very successful robotics company called O-Logic, Bob and Ted, their goal every single year is to try to beat Tony, and every single year Tony still beats them. So this is, again, one of these things where, just like the Olympics, just because you're the best funded or the oldest or the best known doesn't mean that you're going to end up being the winner. Tony, every year, nobody used to know this little kid, now everybody knows him, just walked in and said, okay, I'm here to win. And we get that a lot. You know, everybody comes in and like, they're going to win the gold medal, blah, 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 blah. Tony came in and we're like, okay, nice little boy. And now, you know, if Tony says something, I'm just like, dude, go do it, you know, whatever. There's Micro Mouse, which are maze-solving robots. The Biped race, which is, again, reusing all of these humanoids. And so it's a straight line race. We also have a 1/1000th scale marathon, which is about 4,000 feet, I think, and then they just circle the circle for, I think it's 11 times through the house. It's actually a big challenge, because getting a humanoid robot, as you'll see when I'm done talking, to walk a few steps is fairly easy. Getting a humanoid robot to be able to do a 1,000th scale marathon is nearly impossible, because the robots keep falling and collapsing and just splapping all over the place. The triathlon, as I mentioned before, nobody's ever taken me up on it. Line following, if you're going to talk about the DARPA Grand Challenge, you have to understand that line following is an intrinsic ability to go anywhere. And most people don't really realize how many lines we follow in our daily basis. We're following the line of where the wall is. We're following the lines on the road of the little yellow markers on one side of the road and the little white markers down the center. Ribbon climbing, which is a space challenge. If for those of you who are familiar with Asimov's stories about ribbons going up to the sky, and eventually they want to do that. We have Vex and Lego challenges, Aibo performer challenges, which is basically making an Aibo do cool tricks. Two-wheeled balancers, so for those of you who are familiar with Segways, it's kind of a make-your-own Segway event. Best of show, a lot of times we get robots that don't fit into anything. You know, you're not a walking robot that can run a marathon. You're not a firefighting robot or a combat robot. You're just a guy or a gal or a team of people who've built a cool robot, and it doesn't fit into anything else. So we created the best of show competition to just give everybody else who has some kind of robot a way to compete. And so that's really if you don't fit into everything else, then you go against everybody else who doesn't fit into anything else, and then we figure out which is the best of those robots. The Walker Challenge is actually for hexapods and things like that, so not the bipeds. Here's some pictures of some of the robots that have competed. Interestingly enough, the lower left-hand robot is a steam-powered walking robot. So what you see on that is actually a small steam engine. It's actually driven by steam, and yet, and there's not a single piece of digital software on there or any microchips. It is self-balancing, and it can walk, and it's really a brilliant robot. We also have art robot competitions, and that's that whole form follows function ever after thing, is we wanted to take all of the cool acting robots and make them look better, and so we wanted to influence as well as give the artists a chance to compete. So we have kinetic robots, which are robots which look cool and have at least one motor or pneumatic or hydraulic device attached to it. Static robots, such as the one shown, which just looks cool. Musical robots have to play a musical instrument of some sort. Bartending robots, which have to make and or serve a drink, be it like a mixed cocktail or even a beer. And painting robots, which is actually a robot that makes art. You have a blank sheet of paper, and that robot might make some sort of art over the course of the weekend. Beam robots, which stands for biology, electrical, aesthetic, and mechanical, which are strictly analog-based robots. There's no digital programming in there. Like, I program these robots, and I have huge strands of code. I think this is about 7,000 lines of code to make him walk and do all of the tricks he does. Beam robots, there's not a single line of code, but using strictly analog engineering, you can make those robots actually respond to their environment. We have kids events, unlike US First, another competition. We charge nothing for kids to compete. So we have, I think at this point, about 15 different exclusive kids events for kids from 0 to 17 to compete at no charge. Everything from combat for those kids who want to participate in a combat environment against each other, rather than, it's just not fair to send a 12-year-old kid with a combat robot up against a team of professional engineers. There's just no way that that's going to work. So basically we've segmented that off, not 100% of the divisions, but basically it's probably about 10 to 15% of the divisions that we have kids exclusive events. And the importance of sponsors is one of the big things. Is basically my wife and I have been paying for this out of our own pockets for the last 6 years. So we're always looking for sponsors such as Google and other companies to help pay for this. The future, there's cards on the seats. The event is June 12th, 13th, and 14th in San Francisco at Fort Mason. We'll get at least 30 countries, historically speaking, and probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 robots. Off the top of my head, I know last year we had 450-something robots, I'll say 450, with about 850 humans and about 500 teams. And again, sometimes you'll have a team of 1 human and 2 robots, 1 human and 1 robot, 10 humans and 1 robot, and so on and so forth. Any questions? And then I'm going to do some robot demos.
How many of your competitions highlight some practical task?
Not to be snarky, but I guess it depends on how much you define practical. Case in point, the combat robots, several of the combat robot teams are now U.S. military contractors who are building bigger, better robots specifically that are lighter, more easily carried by soldiers that can be entered into combat and have a higher sustaining rate of combat, so of actual real live combat. So if you look at robot combat as it stands right now, one does not think that that has any practical applications, and yet it can. And it's not just in the combat let's kill people events. A lot of the robot combat guys are finding better ways to make speed controllers and batteries, which is all of the electric cars. So if you're going to talk about Tesla cars, Tesla is always going to need lighter batteries that can carry more amps per kilogram, as well as better speed controllers that aren't going to incinerate. And for those of you who don't know what a speed controller is, robots fundamentally operate radically differently from an internal combustion engine in terms of acceleration and speed. And so what a speed controller does is, not to give you a long engineering lecture, but basically instead of increasing voltage from the batteries to the motors, it pulses a constant voltage between the batteries and the motors. The example I would give is if I had an incandescent bulb and I'm turning it on and off fast enough, that will appear to be that same bulb at 50% light value rather than 100% light value or 0% light value. And the problem just in combat robots is the number of speed controllers that just absolutely self-destruct and incinerate, and the number of fires that we have to deal with every single event, not just in combat but in everything else. In the case of the humanoid events, you can extrapolate both. It's nice to have a robot that can operate in a human environment. A lot of roboticists argue against humanoid robots because they say it's just vain rather than using wheeled robots. Well, I don't consider it vain or unvain. I consider it practical because the world in which we live as humans is based on bipedal movement. And if you are confined to a wheelchair ever, you understand just how much you are confined to bipedal actions. That if you want to get up to the second floor, if you're in a wheelchair, you now have to find an elevator, go up the elevator, and come back. Bipedal movement, a biped can now walk up and down this staircase right here. So whether you're having a robot perform day-to-day tasks, which can now operate in the same environment, or whether you're extrapolating this and making this into a Tetsujin suit and taking out the motors as superstructure and using your own bones as superstructure and then using lighter weight motors to flex muscles, which are now dead, it's a very practical thing. So I would argue that 100% of the events, to some extent, are practical. It's just a question. I mean, search engines, when search engines started, most of them were not, the Lycos-based model of going out and looking for web pages. They were the Yahoo-based model of people had to register with that search engine to be found. And so search engines weren't considered practical until originally Michael Malden went out and said, I'm going to create a web engine that goes out and crawls. And now that's what Google does, and that's what everybody else does. So there are practical exploitations of all of the robotic events here that I could not ever imagine, but every year somebody comes up with and finds a new goal for that. So I would say that 100% of the events have practical applications. I don't necessarily know what they are. I could probably go through every single event and find at least one practical application.
Well, I guess my observation was that there was a lot of government-funded research on AI and autonomy that didn't achieve very many results until the grand challenge had a specific non-trivial task that required, couldn't just write a paper and say, look what I've done.
And I completely agree, and just on a very personal basis, I don't think that a lot of government grants end up with good results, because it's in your best interest as a recipient of a government grant, and remember I come from the university background, to not come up with a result, because then you can get a grant extension and continue on that little gravy train. So I think the DARPA Grant Challenge was good in that capacity, because you had a deadline and you had a competition, and it wasn't just, okay, go research how to do line following. It's go research how to do line following in a real world environment. Oh, and by the way, one of you wins and the rest of you lose. And that's why competitions like, Robogames or the Grand Challenge or anything else are good, because you're pitted against somebody else, and if you take that even in the business degree of, say, Google versus Yahoo, you need to be better, because, if not, they're going to make more money. So, to that end, you're exactly right that, the more these kinds of events force people to be better.
Have you thought of trying to make this a local RoboCup competition? Like, why Miroside, I guess?
We've hosted RoboCup events before. For a lot of reasons, RoboCup doesn't have any interest in co-locating with other events, and that's very true of many events, which is to say we always try to be very inclusive of basically anybody who wants to do a robot event at Robogames. I will say yes to, so long as I believe that that person organizing it is capable of doing it. The Mech Wars, for example, was not my idea. A guy by the name of Andrew Alter said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And I said, if you can find the contestants to do it and you are willing to organize that as a sub-event, in the same way that the Olympics Committee doesn't organize all of the events at the Olympics Committee, they organize the Olympics, and then the Professional Gymnasts Association, whatever they may be, are the ones that actually organize the gymnastics at the Olympics. And so we've always done outreach to every major organization and say, hey, we're not trying to compete with you, we're trying to augment you, and we're trying to highlight that to another audience. And so I've talked to everybody at RoboCup. Manuela at Carnegie Mellon, she doesn't like us because she really despises robot combat and doesn't want to be in the same city with robot combat. So we've done, but we have had RoboCup teams come. We have done IBO soccer before. Actually, I'm going to show you guys a video too of like an 8-minute video of some of the events. So we have done both RoboCup and FIRA. For those of you who, there's two competing robot soccer organizations, FIRA, which is a play on FIFA, the Federation International Football Association, and its Federation International Robot Football Association. And then there's RoboCup, which is a play on FIFA's World Cup organization. One of them started in Korea, one of them started in Japan. And they have very little in-reach actually into the US. FIRA has like 2 or 3 universities that compete, and RoboCup has maybe 10 US universities that compete in RoboCup. Most of the soccer contestants, just like human soccer, it's a very non-US kind of sport. So, Carnegie Mellon and University of Texas at Austin Villa are 2 very big RoboCup supporters, but unfortunately, there's not many more that I know of. I'm going to show you this video, actually, and then I'll take more questions. And I'm fairly good on time for a change.
You're along and welcome to Games Across America, our little coast-to-coast quest to bring you this nation's hottest games and craziest competitions. Now, San Francisco sports fans, they love their Giants and their 49ers, but recently the city was teeming with superhuman athletes all running on juice. No, I'm not talking steroids. I'm talking androids. Robots, right this way.
The Robogames is really a scientific exhibition.
There is a wide variety of different kinds of robots.
A lot of people from other countries are coming out. Where are they coming from?
From every continent.
What is the name of your robot?
The name of our robot?
We're the paranoid androids. This is our robot Marvin.
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay, does he ever go number 2?
Sorry?
Oh, is he peeing on me?
He's a little territorial.
Drop it, give me 20. Humans still have control.
It's a hobby, it's an art form. But then it's also just the thrill of being at the cutting edge of the technology and being able to make these robots do things that nobody else in the world can do.
Anytime you get geeks thinking en masse, you get societal benefits from that.
You prefer the company of robots to humans?
Yeah.
I'm here with David Calkins. He is the organizer of the Robogames, and it was started out as the Robo Olympics. Did the Olympic Committee get on your case?
The Olympic Committee gets on everybody's case.
Tell me a little bit about how the Robogames has evolved.
Last year we only had 31 events. This year we have 43 events. Robot soccer is probably the hardest. You have to do both the artificial intelligence as well as all of the sensors to find the ball. We've got sumo competitions, which are instead of two fat guys pushing each other out of the ring, you have two skinny little robots pushing each other.
Do they wear the mawashi?
Unfortunately not. We've got Robo Magellan, in which robots are given 2 GPS points, and they have to go from point A to point B. Combat robots.
Combat.
Everybody knows it from those 2 popular TV shows. It's kind of like NASCAR, you know? It does a lot of fun to watch.
Is there any cash prizes for any of these?
There are cash prizes, but the real prize are the gold, silver, and bronze medals. These are all personalized with little scrolling LED displays, so if you win, it'll have your name on it.
Bienvenidos, amigos and amigas, Robopero de la Fútbol.
Ivo Soccer is a part of the RoboCup initiative with the ultimate goal of getting robots to be able to beat the World Cup champion soccer team on a real soccer field.
The robot that can play soccer can do nearly anything. A robot that can kick a ball, that can localize on a field, can also localize in any other environment.
Robopero, 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 go! Robopero, go! Here comes the judge.
Siphon 2.
Steel Piranha.
Devil's Plunger.
Leatherface.
Indestructible Crazy Blue Monkey.
MC Pee Pants.
I watch too much TV. It's off a TV show.
Any fighting style that's better for robots than others?
It's pretty much anything goes. That's why we do it behind steel cages and bulletproof glass.
Whoa, 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 all right.
We put a rotating weapon on the back. The idea is to throw some robots up in the air.
Our idea is to get under the other guy and ram him into the wall and break him.
This is obviously a robot that should not be left alone with kids.
Absolutely not. This shouldn't be left alone with me.
How did you do in your last competition?
The guy was so beat up, he couldn't be repaired. I'm used to beating people, but that was a good one. I mean, I sprayed him all over the arena.
What school is this for?
CSUN, Cal State Northridge.
They're probably getting graded on this. Do you feel sorry for them at all?
Yeah, because they're probably all getting Fs.
This is an outlet for geeks and engineers.
Because nobody wants to see 2 geeks fight fist to fist. We're here at Robo Sumo. I know it's a little different because these robots aren't very fat. What does it do?
It finds and pushes the opponent off the sumo ring, I hope.
This gentleman's robot is lost, brought great dishonor to his family. I'm hoping he doesn't commit harry-carry.
What we're trying to do here is trying to navigate this course and autonomously find these cones along the way.
There's a starting cone here, and there's a finish cone up there.
The real challenge is going from point A to point B around all the trees, the bushes.
It looks like a laptop on a radio-controlled car.
On top of it, we have a few sensors, like a webcam and some...
Oh, I'm familiar with webcams.
Infrared. Okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, you mean for... All right, yeah.
Robo ones can walk, they can dance, they can stand on their heads. They're just very, very advanced.
He has 17 degrees of freedom, and a degree of freedom is each one of these joints.
I had 17 degrees of freedom before I got married.
And now?
Maybe 3. Are your robots shy?
He's shaking right now.
Yeah, he's a little nervous. He decided to give it a weapon. If you put a real blade in there, it could possibly cut some sushi.
First place with the Robo 1 demonstration, Weird 72.
Do you go to the other Robo 1 guys and you go, in your face, your robot stinks?
No.
But in here, we all know.
No, never thought about that.
Can you do the robot?
Do you mean the dance?
The robot is a way better dancer than I am.
Really? Now, he can do the robot, but can he do the human?
He cannot. It's surprisingly hard to give a robot soul.
We've got 4 different kinds of art robots. We've got static robots, which are just robot sculptures. Kinetic robots, their goal is to just look cool. Musical playing robots, they must physically play an instrument.
We have robots that can sing, so we no longer have the need for Ashley Simpson.
My favorite is bartending robots. They
Oh,
have
that's
to pour a
definitely my
perfect
favorite,
martini.
If you're looking for anybody to judge the martinis, this must be a human thing. Yes. No, I wouldn't. I'm around touching people there. What do you call one of those small robots? Short circuit. I know, it's good.
You built a robot that can play games.
Yep, Connect 4. Drop one in there, then hit the blue button over here. It's just going to stick that down, and it's looking to see if there's an odd or an even number of chips in each column.
That's what you're going for, isn't it, robot? You're an evil bot, aren't you?
So far, you're not doing bad.
I may look stupid, but I've bested my fair share of robots. You're a little...
bot. Probably going to go right here. This is going to give him a diagonal and a horizontal. You can do whatever you want to. Maybe he won't see it.
I think you will see it.
You son of a gun.
You have bested me. Foster a robot again. First one stole my girlfriend, and now he made me in Connect 4. Do people genderize their robots? Do they say
People
this is a boy bot?
absolutely genderize their robots.
Is it a boy bot or a girl bot?
It's a car bot.
This one is a boy bot.
Oh, it's definitely a boy bot.
I would say more male, but...
More male, but it's got the feminine side. It's a boy bot.
I thought the Segway was cool, so I built my own. It's got a little electronic controller that senses which way it's tilting and runs the wheels forward or backward to keep it level.
All right.
Don't fight it, just hold still.
No, I mean to do this. With all your knowledge of robots, have you made a pleasure bot?
No, this is my one and only bot.
How far away are we from a pleasure bot?
This close, I hope.
I think you need to get out more, find a date.
These are robots that I have captured in the field. They have intermixed and have mutated into
Breeding
the creature.
robots.
Yes.
They're mutating.
You have a cell phone on you?
Not at the moment.
Oh,
no.
good. No, then we can be this close. They go crazy over a cell phone. Oh, hang on a second.
You get rid of that cell phone.
Oh, man, I gotta take this ball.
It's right up. You all right? He'll have to call you back.
Zozbots is 16-ounce robots.
16 ounces of fun.
Fun and pain and damage.
It's a little underwhelming. Oh, MC P-Fest throws him out of the ring quickly. You're champion. How does that feel?
Feels good, man.
I'm here with the champion, Smashbox. Who gets all the robots, girls, and stuff? Obviously, he's a celebrity.
Well, he's kind of a geek, so he doesn't get a whole lot of women.
This is it, people. The championship, the super heavyweight match, super megabyte, ready to take on Shovelhead.
I beat him a couple other times. He's beat me a couple times, too, so it's going to be a good match.
Shovelhead is the first to attack, but a brutal attack by Shovelhead using sheer force. Here comes Super Megabyte now on the offensive. Sparks are literally flying. There goes Shovelhead's weapon. That may do it. That's two titles in one night here, Robogames.
Everyone keeps getting better and better, and we have to keep getting better and better. The good thing about losing is you learn something, but it's much better to win.
More questions?
So what about, is anybody trying to do this elsewhere?
Short answer is no, because everybody else is going out of business. Because nobody else is as obsessive compulsive as I am. Honestly, the robot combat guys, after BattleBots went off the air, there are about 6 different companies around the U.S. who started, all of whom built their own arenas, all of whom have since folded, all of whom since I've bought out. It's there. Unlike many business models, it has a lot of unique aspects to it, such as the fact that, unlike, say, a normal entertainment business model for the Rolling Stones, you have the 5 guys on stage and that's it, right? So you do the show. Part of our business model is other people have to do the show. We have to invite other contestants to come, and it can be very difficult getting other contestants to come sometimes. Part of it is the cost of doing it in other parts of the country and things like that. So the shortest answer is there's some small, teeny tiny little events that happen at science museums and things like that. But this is the biggest and one of the few remaining. Even there's a lot of the small ones, the guys aren't doing it anymore.
So if I want to build a robot and I know almost nothing about that, how would you suggest starting?
It depends on what kind of robot. The quick and dirty answer I'll give you is the best way to start is still Lego Mindstorms. Lego has its own unique robotics program, which is not your normal Legos. Okay, you're putting the trinkets together and then you're holding it in your hand and flying it around, you know, like an X-Wing fighter or something. Lego Mindstorms has multiple inputs and outputs, sensor-based technology. You can program the Mindstorms brick in C, as well as about 5 other languages. You can program in Java. It has its own National Instruments stripped-down version of LabVIEW called NXTG, and multiple other things. So that's the quick and dirty way. I know many professional roboticists, including Shane and I's friend Nick, who prototype all of his full machined aluminum robots in Legos, because if you screw something up in a big, long aluminum tube, you've just thrown away several $100s, and the aluminum's gone. But you can get all of the basic mechatronics down in Legos and then extrapolate that. If you want something a little bit more direct to a PIC microcontroller, I'd recommend the Parallax Bobot, which is a small 16 IO based PIC that you can program directly from your PC. If you want a humanoid, we sell these kits. So you can buy them as a kit, unassembled, or you can buy them fully assembled, ready to walk. They come with 24 built-in routines, and then you can just reprogram them from there. If you want a combat robot, I would say buy an ant-weight robot, the 1 pounds. Start with that so you can figure out the basics of mechatronics, and then work your way up. So it really depends on which aspect of robotics you want to get into.
So it seems that it's pretty hardware centric. Is that true or not? Is it? It's more flashy. The new robots. Is there a more pure software venue for competition?
I mean, I would say that at least 20% of the events are actually all software based. For instance, the firefighting robots. Okay. Most of those firefighting robots are kit-based robots where you buy the physical hardware platform, and then you're reprogramming on the microcontroller. In the case of like these guys, again, you can buy this and you can spend 100% of your time on software and never use a single screwdriver. So certainly combat is, there are guys who will build their own speed controllers and other things and have to program those kits behind them. But it's 95% hardware-based. So within that range of 80-odd events, my competition, I should know how many events there are, but I don't. It's roughly 80. I would say about 20% of those events are software challenges when it comes down to it. The soccer stuff you can buy for like Mirosat. You can buy all of those hardware things. So this is actually what I originally founded the event when I was talking about how the hardware guys never talk to the software guys, and the software guys never talk to the sensor guys, and so on and so forth. That's the thing, is there are many, many software-only challenges. Most of the soccer challenges really are software challenges. What you saw with the iBos replaying, you buy those Sony iBos and you reprogram them. And there's absolutely, what drives me crazy actually about the Sony iBo guys is that most of them, if the iBo breaks, they have no idea how to fix them. And I think they should raise that bar a little bit more. Like, okay, if this is your car, you should know where to put the gas. And a lot of them don't actually know how to replace a servo. But above and beyond that, yeah, you can absolutely do most of the soccer challenge. They're strictly software. Firefighting is strictly software. Maze solving is strictly software.
How expensive are those iBo robots?
You can buy them on eBay in the $400 to $2,000 range, depending on their condition and which model. And I will also say, and I'm not related to Sony, that Sony iBo is probably the single greatest consumer product that has ever come out, and it's also probably one of the worst marketed products that has ever come out. People that really, who have just seen it up here, don't realize its out-of-the-box capabilities. It has very good facial recognition software built into it that can recognize 75 faces. So it could be, I always consider that a great cocktail robot, that if you have a cocktail party and you invite a whole bunch of people from work, and you don't remember this guy's name, you can have him be like, the town crier robot. So when this guy walks through the door, the robot can say, "Hey, it's Shane from marketing," because the robot has the facial recognition and knows who Shane is. So then you go, "Oh, hey, Shane, how you doing? It's been a long time." You don't have to worry about forgetting names. It has text-to-speech software. It came out before spam became a real problem, like a real problem. And I have like three spam filters on the server side, one client side, and I still get about 50 to 100 pieces of spam a day. So it can read you your email. The reason I'm giving you the spam caveat is if you unfortunately, if you're getting 100 pieces of email, of which only 3 are valid, you have to cycle through the robot reading the titles. It won't read the full email, it'll read you the titles, and you can pick which ones. It has voice recognition, so you can say, yes, I want to hear this email, no, I don't want to hear that email. It can roll over, it's got software to be a party dog, so it can like do all these tricks and things like that. It can be teleoperated, so you can be at work, the robot can be at home, you can control the robot through the internet so long as your home PC has a Wi-Fi connection and you can hook up to that, so you can walk the dog around your house and find out if your wife is sleeping with the mailman, if the kids are doing homework, if there's a burglar in the house. Sony never told anybody about that, so people would walk into the Sony store and go, $2,500 for a toy, screw that. And they never really realized exactly how powerful that robot was. If you could find an ERS-7, which is the ones that you saw up there, the little Snoopy Dog looking ones, the last time I looked on eBay, which is over a year ago, and I don't know if at that time the price was holding at about $3,000. Okay, I don't know if there's been significant depreciation in price since then or not. I know that the RoboCup guys would always be buying them up on eBay. RoboCup recently changed from that platform to a different platform, so they're not as in great a demand.
So, do you have like pointers on a website or something to, in particular?
Absolutely.
When I looked at this in the past, it was motor technology that was the big problem.
I would say that all the technologies are issues and they all are interrelated. But yes, I don't know if I'm connected to the internet through here or not. But yeah, we list all of the winners year after year, both by robot and by country. So.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, it was more like a how-to on, these motors are useful, these sensors are useful.
That's almost a religion war, and there's so many companies out there now that provide essentially the same services. That, I mean, motor technology, there's, I don't know, just in combat, there's at least 20 different really good motor manufacturers, all of which are very good. And it's religion, it's Jew, Christian, Muslim. I mean, I know guys who will absolutely only ever use NPC motors, and don't you dare mention another brand. I know other guys who will only ever use Maxim motors, and don't you ever mention another brand, or E-Tex, and so on and so forth. So certainly that is really not an issue. But as far as the winners, yeah, we always really try and highlight the winners, and by country as well. So. Mostly, I would say that the U.S. dominates by virtue of the fact that this is a San Francisco-based competition, and it still costs a lot of money to fly to San Francisco. So, like last year, the Koreans who came utterly, completely dominated the humanoid events. So those were the humanoid events from last year. And we had one Korean university team that came with, I think, 6 robots. And I think USA won 5 of the possible medals, and Korea just took everything else. And of those 5, they're all different teams, whereas all of the other Korean medals are from a single team. They were just so dominant. Now we've had Japanese contestants in the past, same thing. Like here, you can see the Japanese dominate in sumo robots. And I think that's very much a corollary to both the cultures of varying societies, as well as it correlates back to even the regular Olympics, where the US will typically dominate in these Olympic sports, and Japan will dominate in those Olympic sports, and Russia and these other ones, And so, for instance, like hockey, exclusive of, 1984, Russia has always been or 1980, whichever the dream team was, Russia has always been a very dominant hockey team. Canada's always been a very dominant hockey team. I mean, it's cool that the Jamaicans field the bobsled team, but they're not going to win any medals, and it's that kind of thing of they're definitely dominating countries. More questions? Anybody in South Carolina? No? All right. I'll have the robot do some tricks. I'm going to be really brave and try this on a stand. And